Hey guys, what's up? Barrett and St. Drummer. Today I just wanted to talk a little bit about teaching. Like, say you've been playing guitar or drums or whatever instrument for a little while, and you're very well versed in it. You might not have a degree or anything because that costs a lot of money, right? The only reason I have one is because I was lucky enough for the government and my parents' support. But besides that, say you want to start teaching on that instrument, whatever it is. I've been teaching for about 5 years, and as you may or may not know, I started a studio of my own about 3 years ago, called Insane Rhythm Music Lessons, and I've basically filled up my schedule within the past 3 years. Been able to fill it up, and so I've been teaching about 5 years now or so, and got my degree from UTC for music education. So, I'm just saying I have a little bit of credentials to talk about this subject. Now, I've never taught in public school, so I can't say anything about that. These tips are basically mainly just for private instruction. So, say you're interested in private instruction, which is the way to go. I mean, of course, you're not going to have a studio at first. I didn't have a studio at first. I legitimately used to have a drum set in my car, and I would take that drum set to my students' houses. That's how I started teaching drums. That's kind of like the digging ditches of it, I suppose. And I started getting my name out there a little bit as a drum teacher. And as I started doing that, I started noticing what the market was like price-wise. I started noticing lots of things and learning lots of things just by doing that. Kind of how to read students, and we'll talk about all that. But the one thing I noticed, and this is an important thing if you're going to teach music, one thing I noticed is that, say I'm giving a drum lesson to a kid, his spouse or whatever, and the parent would look at me and say, "Hey, do you do guitar as well?" Because his sister or brother, their sister or brother, are interested in doing that instrument. So my first big tip for you as an entrepreneur, person who's going to teach music lessons is don't be a one-man pony. Or a one-man band, whatever I'm trying to say. A one-trick pony. There we go. That was the first lesson I learned, is that to specialize, even though I basically do specialize in drums, right? To specialize in teaching one instrument is like a construction company only doing framing, right? Why with such an interested market, saturated market with all these different instruments? I'm not saying teach something that you don't know anything about. Duh, right? That's not going to work. But open yourself up. Open yourself up to more instruments. That's my first tip for teaching private music lessons. That's kind of the first thing I learned, is that the more things that I can teach, the more money I can make in less time. That's kind of the bottom line. So fast forward a couple of years, I taught at this place called Fireball Music for a little while, and I made barely anything. I made like $7 a student. I only had like 6 students the whole time I worked there for about a year. And so I would make like $50 at the most, every week, which was, as a college student, it's extra money. It's, take your girlfriend out to eat money, but it's nothing, you can't do anything with that. So long story short, like I said, now I have my own studio, but you can always start out of your home. Always start out of your home. Tip number 2, Craigslist. I'm serious. Don't discount Craigslist. I don't care if there was a killer. There's a killer everywhere. You know what I'm saying? The great thing about the whole Craigslist killer thing was it scared people off Craigslist. Why is that a good thing? Because people like me, years ago, when people were scared of Craigslist because of that whole thing, I was getting music students off of it. So go into the Craigslist thing and wherever your city is, and go to the lessons tab, and put an ad out there and say what you do and what you charge, and give them as much information as possible. And if you do that, maybe a picture or so. If you do that, then you will start to get students. All you have to do is that one little bit of work, and guess what? It's free, right? Free advertising. you're not bringing anything in the very beginning. You haven't built a student base. That's what you want to do. You want free advertising because you might not have a lot of capital to start out with, and the more students you can bring in, the more cash flow you start, or the more revenue you start bringing in, then the more you can start thinking about paid advertising, right? So as you start teaching, you are going to run into the hardest thing about teaching private music lessons, believe it or not. One of the hardest things is that you're not teaching a public school. What I mean by that is, normally in a public school, you have either you're an elementary teacher, or you're a middle school teacher, or you're a high school teacher, or you teach college. You're used to those age groups. This is a big thing because different ages that you teach are going to require different, what we call pacing in education. So how the lesson is paced. Obviously, kids are going to have a smaller attention span, and they're also going to want to be entertained a lot more. Entertainment is a big factor, but going back to the age thing, if you have a middle school age kid, he's going to be more interested in what he wants to learn and less interested in what you want him to learn. And that is a line you always have to draw as a music teacher. What I mean by that is, we love to talk about theory. We love to talk about the technical side of things because, let's face it, that's a lot of what education is. It's a lot of technicality and what I can teach you out of a book. But the beauty about music education is, and the guys who do it well know that you have to draw the line. Because if you're always teaching a kid, no matter what age they are, about the music theory and about the technical side of music and not the what they want to learn, maybe they want to learn Taylor Swift. You cannot be a music elitist if you teach music. I'm a rock and roller. I will teach Taylor Swift all day long. I will teach Justin Bieber. And Courtney is good for that because she helps me be versed in all the BS pop that I don't listen to that I need to listen to for lessons to know that sort of thing, because that's what teenagers want to learn. But pacing is a big thing. With kids, you got to go faster. So you might spend a little bit on a song and then spend a little bit on maybe one little exercise you want them to learn, maybe one little fingering thing, or if it's drums, maybe one little rudiment, and then pacing, and then also just getting them in kind of a schedule. So a big thing is, when they first come in the door, always greet the student and say, "How are you?" Act like you care about the student. You are a teacher and you're there to make money, you're there to teach them about music, but you're not going to do that at all if you don't develop some sort of professional relationship with the student. This goes back to age. If it's an adult, they don't care so much about that, but you always want to be friendly, duh. Like that's with any business, right? But always, whenever the student comes in the door, I'm always like, how's it going? You don't get personal or anything, but it's very casual. And you also say, what I like to do is, I'll say something like, "How's drums going for you?" Or "How's guitar going for you?" Which I'm a really laid back guy, anyways. So I'm a really laid back kind of lesson guy. Like I don't know how to explain that, but I'm just a laid back kind of guy. And so then that allows the student to then it's basically a nice way to say, "Have you been practicing?" See, if you don't put the student on the spot about the whole practicing thing, then they don't. You always want the student to feel comfortable, and one of the reasons why I am as successful as I am in Chattanooga is because I don't rail the students. I don't get on to them about not practicing every single time they come in the door. If it's a piano student, I don't get on to them about missing notes and stuff, just all kinds of things. That's what I mean by this is a very laid back kind of atmosphere in the studio, and that's the kind of people who are teaching for me as well. They're very laid back, and it's not because honestly, man, I understand the power of practice, and I want my students to practice, don't get me wrong, but one of my big philosophies is play. Don't worry so much about practice, just play your instrument. If you're not going to practice for me, at least just play your instrument. And some people will never understand that philosophy. That's just always been something that I've been big on as I've been teaching. And the fourth thing is, remember it's a business. And that goes back to everything else I've pretty much said, and drawing the line between the technicality and what they want to learn, being personable, being professional, but still not a hard ass, right? No one wants to come take lessons from a hard ass. You just put yourself in their perspective. They want to come, they want to have fun. You got to be entertaining. You got to make the lesson fun. You got to pace it, okay? You got to pace it at the appropriate pace for whatever age group you're dealing with. And you got to make sure that they come out of that lesson with something new that they've learned, and that when they come back, they have something to show you. That goes, actually, I got 5 for you, okay? Fifth one, make them have a folder. I have 40 plus students. I cannot remember every single student's progression and where exactly they are. I try my best, and I'm pretty good at it, to be honest with you, especially it depends on how long you had the student, right? But if they have a folder, they bring the folder back the next time. Guess what? You know exactly where you were, where you left off, and then that's an easy way, to get right back where the last lesson began. It's an easy way to see how they're progressing. And here's the trick, man, is that if you make the lesson fun and you make the student want to be motivated enough to play the instrument more, then most of the time, not all the time, most of the time you will see improvement. This is why I have the improvement in my students that I do, because I'm laid back, I'm more fun, I'm entertaining, and I draw the line. There's a very important line you have to learn how to draw between fun and learning. Okay, I'm not saying make the whole lesson a song they want to learn the whole time. They have to understand you. They have to trust you in your judgment at the same time. So there's a lot of generalities I'm talking about here. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's just like anything else. So that's just some tips, guys. Hope you got something out of that. I have fun. I like teaching in general. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.